there's so much investment here in pharma, means that Ireland really will be the ultimate test bed and playground, as it has been, as you quite rightly said, not just for global homo, but for all of this new technology, surveillance state, vaccines, all these kind of treatments. So they will really try to have their way with us. We've so many pharma companies here. And, and then you're frustrated, when you hear this kind of stuff and you're woke to it, you kind of go, hold on a second here. You're talking about how these hundreds of new jobs from some multinational who probably will hire foreign nationals or bring them in from abroad is good for the economy. They'll pay very little tax. But, Jim's pub down the street is still closed and has been for months. That's the economy. That's the Irish economy. They don't see this, and it's incredibly frustrating. So I'll move on to talking about the health app. So a number of people have said this, not just apps like this, but let's talk about the back end of it, which is the testing. Which is the kind of the main component of it, is being tested on a regular basis. The situation with testing and with, they put this, you go into some places and they do your temperature with this gun and they check your temperature. Whether it's testing through the swab or the testing with the gun, that can be weaponized against people. Oh, Fiona Marie Flanagan, Dave Cullen. Oh, these are political dissenters. Let's fiddle with the temperature thing. Let's fiddle with their test results to make sure that they always test positive for COVID and have to quarantine or to be brought off to a facility. This is how you get rid of people. And I've said this before many months ago. Firstly, I'm not suicidal. Number two, it wouldn't surprise me if we reach a stage where you're brought to these facilities, just like we're seeing in New Zealand, these camps. And then essentially what they do is they get rid of dissenters by ensuring that their swab or whatever medication they give you while you're there is not good for you, shall we say. And then it'll be, they died of COVID. Well, and they were against it. They said it was a conspiracy. See now, that'll get the rest of you in check.
Well, what's the first thing that Hitler would do? Or what would Stalin do with dissenters? What did Stalin do with dissenters? Rounded up into the gulags, never to be seen again. So come on, history. Let's learn from history. But on the subject of testing, what I brought, I was actually on Gran Torino, and I brought this to people's attention. It's a Rockefeller document. And it's the National COVID-19 Testing Action Plan. And it was dated April 2020. Now, they've since amended it. But this document laid out very clearly, way back then in April, it seems long ago now, that the objective is a mass industry of testing, whereby each of us is tested repeatedly, at least twice a month. At the very least. So the industry around testing and tracing and tracking aligns exactly with something, the technology such as a passport app that you're talking about, the health passport app, because that's obviously a repository for these test results. But this is quite revealing, because in the document, it actually describes waves of COVID-19. So in other words, we're getting another wave and another lockdown. And as I said, this was last April 2020. So the testing industry was always going to emerge. We were always going to get these suspect cases on the back of testing. As we have discussed, and as you've discussed with Professor Cahill, and so is Rowan, we're very clear on the difficulties with the PCR test at this stage. But this is exactly where we are heading, and this is global. It has been published, it is clear, it is there for everyone to read. So yes, Dave, I cannot see a way around whether Ireland or whatever country you're living in gets its act together and operationalizes this testing capacity. The extent to which it's capable of doing this very, very quickly depends on the country itself. I'm hoping the Irish will be more disorganized, and I can rely on that. But this is what's going to happen, Dave. It's
well, actually, on the subject of the testing, what I suspect, at the end of that Health Passport Ireland video, or towards the end of it, it starts talking about it, and it'll have your vaccine status too, right? And so what you've said there, I think, the regular testing. So what do we know about testing? Well, testing is really awful. It's an incredibly unpleasant experience, to have this thing rammed up the back of your, through your nose into the back of your. And so what I think will happen is that people will be so traumatized by this. You know, they look at their app and go, "Oh, I'm getting an amber," or "Oh God, I have to do this test again. Oh yeah, when's yours? Oh, mine's Thursday. I'm dreading it. I'm dreading it." And so this is the way people will go, and they will be dreading it. And then what'll happen is like, "Oh, good news. You don't want to take these regular tests all the time? Well, one jab in the arm, and that'll do you for 6 months or a year till the next vaccine that you need to take." And then it just goes on and on. And so you will quickly corral the public away from, so you create, it is the problem reaction solution. Everything is a series of Hegelian dialectics over and over and over again. You create this horrible situation that people want to get away from. And then you go, well, thankfully, this horrible situation has this solution. This horrible situation has this solution, and so on and so on and so on and so on, until you completely change the society and the behavior of the people.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This is the natural lead into accepting the vaccination. But don't ever think, I mean, I think people might again think that the vaccine will solve all problems and we'll get back to normal. No, we're never going to get back to normal. It is not in the planning. For anybody who doubts me, go on to the World Economic Forum and they will discuss with you how architecture and new housing developments are being planned to accommodate social distancing. They will also show you how work is going to be in 5 years' time when you do actually manage to go into the office wearing your face mask and social distancing. So the COVID world is here to stay. Obviously, they won't announce, well, actually, some people have announced it, but it hasn't really gotten mass coverage. So the testing is just, you know, a piece of a nasty process we have to go through. And actually, I know of someone whose friend flew from London to the Middle East and had to get a test in London before they could fly there. And they said the test was so painful, so uncomfortable that they had pains in their eyes for 6 hours afterwards, and they vowed that they will never go through this again. So what you're saying is quite correct. The testing, such as it is, will be such an unpleasant, horrible experience for most of us. Now, some people might actually enjoy this, goodness knows why, but that, yes, they will willingly accept the vaccine. But the vaccine is not the silver bullet. It really never was designed to be. It's just going to be an ongoing process of vaccination in a permanent COVID world of social distancing, of masking, and of Agenda 2030 dystopian horrors that they're going to introduce gradually over the next few years.
Yeah, you can see the transition now. I mean, as Rosa Corey has said, that they weren't getting it done with climate change. But funnily enough, as you've described there, what COVID does, and this is why I think it's come out of more than just a think tank. It's like it's come out of a super AI intelligence going, okay, what's your problem? Let me tell you the solution. Come up with a virus. So the virus dovetails with and connects with all of the climate change stuff, because it's saying things like, we're going to redesign the cities, space out the cities. We're going to do all these things, more public transport. And actually, if you go into Dublin now, it's a strange thing. We've been under this lockdown apparently, and all of this has been going on. We're supposed to go along with this, but if you look at what's occurred, is that there has been modifications made to streets, and go down Dame Street, for example. They've expanded the path there. Little things like this are happening more and more, and people go, oh sure, it's great, there's more room there to walk. But again, it's part of the changing of the structure, and the architectures of the cities are being modified. CNN has covered this extensively, and I've talked about this. The climate change agenda is being achieved now, and Tedros has said this as well. Now the climate change is the next big target. Actually, it's not. The situation is that COVID has enabled them to finally achieve all the control measures that the climate change thing was supposed to bring in, and that includes, at the very micromanagement level, being able to know, track, determine, and obviously control every aspect of human beings' consumption. How much, what they take out of the ground, each individual person, what their individual's carbon footprint is. They want to get down to that level. As Rosa described it, we're in the inventory and analysis phase, right? For each individual, they want to be able to know exactly what we are, how much of an impact we have on the environment, and so forth, or at least based on their metrics. Now, the following was posted on the World Health Organization website, and that was on August 21st, 2020. World Health Organization Director General's opening remarks at the media briefing on COVID-19, and I'm just going to go down here to a part that is relevant. At the same time, we cannot go back to the way things were. I wonder why. Throughout history, outbreaks and pandemics have changed economies and societies. This one will be no different. In particular, the pandemic has given new impetus to the need to accelerate efforts to respond to climate change. Arbitrary? Okay. The pandemic has given us a glimpse of our world as it could be, cleaner skies and rivers. So the lockdown was very useful in reducing human movement. Basically, it showed them what the world would look like if there was very few people walking the streets or walking around in the countryside, because everybody was stuck in their homes, obviously. Building back better means building back greener. In May, World Health Organization published our manifesto for a healthy and green recovery with 6 policy prescriptions for protecting nature, investing in water and sanitation, promoting healthy food systems, transitioning to renewable energy, building livable cities, that's smart cities, human habitat zones, as we know, where basically everybody is expected to live in the future, that's Agenda 2030, and stopping subsidies on fossil fuels. What a coincidence that the pandemic would just happen to give them everything they wanted with respect to the climate change narrative.
Yes, and COVID is the perfect mask for the climate change agenda. And in fact, on the World Economic Forum, there was an article, I think it was a couple of months ago, saying that COVID-19 is the vaccine for climate change. Yeah, so these agendas completely converge in what they're doing. And if people are in any doubt, I would suggest that you go into your search engine and type climate action plan and your local area, and you will see very, very clearly that your local area or council or region or state or however you're organized has a climate action agenda, and it covers the next 5 to 10 years. And if you go in there, you'll see a lot of common themes, obviously, tailored to the particular geographical characteristics of where you live, but everyone has signed up to it. Absolutely everyone. Even Kuwait has a climate action plan. They don't have to reduce their emissions by very, very much over the next 5 years, but they have one. And in fact, if you recall, not so long ago, just a few months, I think it was just this time last year, many countries were actually declaring climate emergencies, which meant that they were going to accelerate their climate action planning going forward. And then we have COVID-19, and then amazingly, everything that is being used to mitigate climate change is also converging with the policies to mitigate against viruses and pandemics. So it's such a convenient situation,
it is,
Dave, isn't it?
And the last year or so, there were more and more stories. I think maybe as far back as 2018, 2019, there were these stories that were just coming out of the woodwork, and it was like very spontaneous. A number of mainstream publications, The Guardian, CNN, and others, were suddenly talking about how we're all going to be eating insects and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there were other articles from other publications talking about lab-grown meat increasingly. But that was brought about to fight climate change, and that there's just not going to be the ability to continue to support the world's population based on the I suppose the damage or the expenditure of resources that so much agricultural land requires. And so they decided, they came up with this whole thing. We're all going to be eating insect bars and everything else and all this sort of stuff. So this went on and on and on. And now we're seeing the closure of meat plants. Again, he who controls the food supply, right? So it's coming back to that. There's more food plants going. They were talking today on the stream over on Gran Torino about closures in Kildare, in those midland counties that were shut down, and of course now over in Galway. This is everywhere. You can look this up absolutely everywhere. Now the extraordinary thing is, like, right, apparently we're supposed to believe that meat plants everywhere, all over the world, are just incompetent, right? And they're all equally as incompetent, and that's why they all need to be shut down. Of course, they're going after they start with the meat, and they're going after grain and everything else. They're going after other, but they're going after all these factories. We're supposed to believe that they're all just incompetent, and they just can't maintain social distancing, and they can't maintain the cleanliness requirements, and to keep their staff sufficiently clean and everything else. we're just supposed to believe that they just can't keep up with the COVID requirements. But
And
Amazon warehouses they're fine, and
Amazon
they're
warehouses.
massive. Yeah,
They're perfectly well run,
yeah,
perfectly massive. No, come on, listen. This is just way. I don't believe in coincidences in any case, and because of the way the testing is conducted, they're actually deliberately targeting these meat plants, going in, testing perfectly healthy, asymptomatic people, and getting. This is my hypothesis, because these people aren't presenting for tests. Where are they actually going for tests? And how come they're all from these meat factories? Ireland isn't that advanced. I know it's gearing up for testing, but we're not at the point where people just say, oh, well, before I head to work, sure, I may as well just pop down and have the old COVID test and see what my RAG status is, whether I'm good to go, green to go. But on the point of the meat factories, we are going to be in a situation, it is planned for us to be in a situation whereby if we consume any energy or calorific content over and above that which is necessary to sustain us alive, will be considered immoral. We will be told that we are immoral human beings if we have that shower when we shouldn't do, or turn on the heat when we're cold. And Al Gore has recently come out with a proposition where artificial intelligence can actually map to the individual and determine how much of a carbon footprint you are consuming. So each one of carbon emissions will be able to be traced right down to the individual level.
Well, this is the reason why
social credit.
Exactly. This is the reason why they want to limit our movement so much, not just in our towns and cities, as you've said before, 2 to 5 kilometers and public transport and everything else, but why they are very happy. I think it's something like up to 20% of global travel is down 20%. And they're delighted with this because, again, it comes back to reducing carbon emissions. And when you looked at the COVID Pass app, which is basically they want a sample of your blood. I mean, they literally come from your blood now. It's not like vampires. The World Economic Forum put up that video, right, a few weeks ago there, and I did a video on this.
Yes, I
now,
saw that.
at the end of it, it says it commits to mandatory carbon offsetting for each of its passengers to preserve the environmental benefits of reduced air travel during the crisis. So it's all about, again, the individual, everything that they do and consume being rationed. Right?
Yes.
Your behavior has to be limited and confined and constrained. They want people to basically live in a virtual reality in their own homes rather than going outside. And essentially that the virtual world, the world that in other words, your online avatar, the means by which you communicate with the outside world through your computer, you will have more freedom online than you do in the outside world. The outside world will be just so many onerous draconian rules, so many measures, so much bureaucracy, so many difficulties just going about. You just won't want to be there amongst other people. And social distancing factors into that again. The ultimate psychological warfare of making people afraid of each other. When you go outside, you walk down Grafton Street, you see somebody with a mask, you see somebody not wearing a mask. The mask wearer goes, "Oh God, there's an unclean, better get away from them." And it's going to get so much worse when it comes to this health app, because the people who get a positive and they're red, they test red, those people will be treated, oh God, right, you're a pariah. But likewise, the people who don't go along with the app will also just be assumed that they must be infected, because why? Otherwise, you get the app and get tested.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
your the way they will do it is your default. I would imagine they'll do it this way. Your default status will be red, i.e., you're a default case, unless you can prove otherwise. So you'll be guilty until you can prove your innocence. That's how. If I was, super mean and super nasty, that's how I would set things up. So it's up to the individual to prove that they are free or COVID free at this particular point in time.
Yeah, and this is the thing. This does not have to be made mandatory at the level of, a law, right? Don't have to bring an act, don't have to bring a law, any bills. That doesn't have to be brought in. There's no legislation required. If enough members of the public download this bloody thing, get the tests, and it's just a test, it's just an app, right? If they go along with it, and then, the pubs being held basically to ransom and being told, okay, you want to reopen? You want the social distancing to end? No problem. Just make sure all your staff and all your customers comply to this app. If they do it, and if it becomes something that the culture and the businesses adopt, right? This is where libertarian principles
Yes.
really fall down here in a major way. Because at one
Yeah,
side,
and communitarian principles rise up,
exactly,
which is where we're at.
because what you're saying is the libertarian mindset. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, which is that it's this right for the individual to be able to come and go as they please without being inhibited, right, in any way, and to being forced or coerced to do anything or to wear anything, or to, that they have their own autonomy. And yet the libertarian also has to defend the private business that decides to go along with this app and say, well, to come in here, to come into this grocery store, to come into this pub, you have to use the app, and that's our right to do that because we can turn you away, right? So that's really the difficulty that I see here. If most people go along with this, we are just screwed. The government doesn't even, they just have to suggest it, that this would be the best way to go, and then sit back and watch the populace gradually acclimatize to it. And they can certainly enforce it at the pinch points, which is what they did with the masks, which is to say, if you want to travel on a plane, you want to travel on the train, the bus, the Lewis, whatever, if you want to get on public transport, if you want to go to the grocery store, it's mandatory for you to wear a mask. And then it will be mandatory in those situations to use this app and to get tested, and then the vaccine. So after that, it just becomes about the culture going, well, okay, this is just how we do things now. And that, yes. I don't see any going back to normal into people, I don't know how you even take a case against that.
I'm sorry, I feel very much the same, Dave, as I have observed society over the last few months. I really cannot see. I believe we'll take it on. They'll take it on. They'll go for it, and they will alienate and isolate those of us who do not wish our bodily integrity to be compromised in this draconian manner. I've even heard conversations around me in sort of neighbours, and they're going along with it. Oh, well, the attitude seems to be, oh, well, sure, what can we do? What can we do? And someone else even told me that when they were canvassing for the general elections, they were going around talking about, wider policy issues and the direction of the country. This was before the pandemic was declared. And the people in question were, well, can you fix my pothole? Can you trim the bush there that's blocking my view? That's all they were concerned about. It wasn't anything, macro at all. It was just my little sphere that I influence and I live in, and fix my pothole, and then I'll give you my vote. It's absolutely incredible. But if I can go back to the human side of it and how humanity is being viewed right now, it's clear that the powers that be that are imposing these draconian policies, and I just want to remind your viewers that every single member country of the United Nations signed on to binding international health regulations, which are enforced during pandemics. So all of these policies are coming down from the World Health Organization, in addition to which the World Bank is issuing loans and aid to over 100 countries around the world through this through this pandemic. Undoubtedly, those loans will be tied to conditions. And I'm hearing, especially with Belarus, now, I'm not going to get into the specific details in it, but suffice to say that the leader in Belarus has come out and said that the World Bank conditionality was not acceptable to that country because they wanted them to go into full-on lockdown. So we are here, and it is clear to me that human beings are viewed as superfluous to requirements right now. AI is going to take over. Humans are, we get sick, we're weak, we're feeble, we need lots of supports, we need lots of welfare. We're of no use anymore when you could have artificial intelligence performing pretty much all, if not, most of the jobs that we do. And the technology has advanced to such a point that this is now possible. And I believe technology is probably even way more advanced than we have been exposed to at this particular juncture. So you can see why they're looking at us, why our jobs will be no more, why everything will be mechanized, artificial intelligence will rule the day. And the extent to which we will have no use sitting in our little pods hooked up to the internet with 5G blasting and living in our virtual worlds. So hopefully your viewers can see that we are useless now, we are most definitely considered the useless eaters and will be treated as such.
Well, appeasement never works. It starts. People think that if I wear the mask, they'll leave me alone, or they'll listen. I'll just
No,
go along with this, and that's the occupation mindset, right? That's the cowardice. You're an occupied person. They occupy your mind first, and then after that, you'll literally, as people have done, lock themselves in their homes as told. And when they say things like, "Okay, we're going to come up with a figure, whatever that's going to be. This is how much emissions you're allowed to produce as a human being. This is how much of an impact you're allowed to have on the environment. This is how many calories you're allowed to consume." And they set a target for each individual person, whatever that might be. And that's this is what we see. Communism starves people. It's not surprising. This is
yes,
what it is. Ultimate control, and then the starvation of the human being. And it will result in so many deaths. It's just going to be absolutely catastrophic. But then what will happen is that once they get what they want, they'll erode that, and then they'll say, "Okay, well, they seem to be able to survive with this much, and they are the useless eaters, so we'll just reduce that quotient again, and then and then you're going to get more death, and they can just keep ratcheting that up over and over and again." So you have to stand your ground. You cannot just simply go, "Okay, how much do you want me to be eating? What do you want me to wear?" As if that they're going to stop and go, "Okay, we're done messing with you now. We're just going to stop." You mentioned, because they never will. They won't stop until they've
they
eradicated
won't
most
stop.
people.
They will absolutely not stop.
No, and so you mentioned the what you're referring to there with the technology, the automation, is the fourth industrial revolution. Now, this is not a secret. The fourth industrial
No.
revolution. You can go to the World Economic Forum website. Don't take this from us again. People call us conspiracy theorists, and all we're doing is research. All we're doing is going online and reading what the UN, World Health, the
It's
mainstream
there
media.
for everyone. In fact, sorry, Dave, to interrupt you, but you can get back on again. Klaus Schwab has written a book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's available on Amazon, Amazon Kindle, if any of you want to read his prophetic words.
I've always known that there are nefarious actors in this world, governments, and indeed now we're seeing the true power players behind it. Such organizations like Rockefeller, World Economic Forum, UN, World Health, your Bilderbergers, Gates Foundation, have all these players. In other regards, you've got influencers in the BLM side, Soros, all these people. They've always been there. There's always been a deep state. There's always been these entities. And you expect them to try these things from time to time. What you always hope and count on is that people will resist. But unfortunately, because of the media, the school system, the culture itself, I don't know whether it's just the population are dumbed down, or I don't know what is it, something in something in the water. I don't know.
Well,
But people
yeah.
just cannot be reasoned with. The biggest threat we face is compliance of the public more than anything, because evil people will do evil. That's what you expect them to do. It's the public that are the biggest danger to the rest of us who are awake. It should be a case of, okay, you want to wear a mask, you want to take a vaccine that could have God knows what in it, you go ahead. But unfortunately, no one can be left behind. We're not allowed to resist. The people who stand up against it, we become the targets. I got to be honest. I'll finish on this note. I'm not expecting to live a long time. I'm not suicidal. I want to point that out there, just in case anyone says it. I'm in good health. But I'm not seeing. I know that they're going to be coming for dissenters before too long, unless we start putting hundreds of thousands of people on the streets and seeing that translate to millions in the UK and places like that. Unless there is an awakening, I'm seeing just more mask compliance, and mask compliance will likely translate into app compliance. That will translate into testing compliance. That will translate into vaccine compliance and everything else. And I'm not seeing it in the general public, and I don't think they see it either. So it's a bit of a reality check. I've often described it as the reality check that Ireland got before they played the All Blacks in the World Cup. We thought maybe we'll have a chance because we beat them twice before, and then we got hammered. We knew what was going on there. But it's the reality check of the last two referendums. It's the reality check that we got with the election for nationalists. It's the reality check there in terms of the percentage that we actually achieved, which is very, very low. And I think unfortunately we're in for another one. Now, I do think that things have changed. Maybe things. I was talking to a friend who was trying to pick me up there last night, which is that maybe things just take that little bit longer. Certainly we're in better shape than we were, I think, in March, April, when people were 100% buy-in. But this is, I feel now, especially with these apps and the acceleration and the meat processing, that is a steel-toed boot we're going to feel the effects of that over the next few months when the shelves are increasingly emptier and emptier.
Yeah,
I tell you what, their plan is comprehensive. It's been well strategized. They've got a lot of contingencies there. They know they're rolling out everything bit by bit by bit, and various stages. I think they got us by the balls here. I'm not gonna lie. So
they do.
Yeah.
But we owe it. I know you and I are a little fish, and what we do is pretty meaningless. But we owe it to ourselves, to our families, and to humanity to survive.
Yeah.
That's all we can do. We have to keep going. I think, to finish my point, you need your networks. You need to connect with like-minded people, and maybe there won't be some mass awakening, but you've got to work on your wits to get yourself through the next 5 years, because you owe it to humanity to do that.